Welcome to Sunlit Brushstrokes. Today I'm going to show you some simple doodles that you can use to add artwork to your journal, scripture writing, your gratitude pages, planner, or anywhere else you'd like to add a little touch of beauty. First, we'll start by drawing some leaves, and then we'll use those to draw some sprigs. We'll add berries and flowers, create some page borders, and finally draw a simple wreath using the elements we create together. As a bonus, I've included a download of all of these elements that you can use as a reference guide or to trace into your own journal. Let's go ahead and get started. Now I'm going to be using a mechanical pencil today, and I'm just working in my sketchbook. I usually do use a mechanical pencil in my journal. I prefer to do that for both my scripture writing and for any elements or little doodles designs I do around it, just because it's the fastest, it's the most forgiving, and you can absolutely go over it with pen afterwards, or a felt pen or a colored pencil. And you could work in colored pencil because colored pencil is fairly forgiving, but I'm going to be using a mechanical pencil today. So let's start out with some basic leaf shapes. So I like to do a nice stem, and when I do a stem, I tend to use heavier pressure at the base and then kind of flick off so the pressure lightens. So I kind of swung a little bit with my wrist as I do that. And then I just go ahead and add I'll try and use a little bit of bumpiness or wiggliness in my arm movement as I do this, and I'll draw the outside of the leaf so that it kind of comes to a tip just almost within the area of the vein. So of course you can do that with really, really small leaves. You can make those leaves longer, so it's like a tall, skinny leaf. You can make it a little bit short and fat, like something like this. You can make it widen closer to the tip of the leaf rather than at the base. It's kind of a little bit of a reverse shape, but some leaves are like that. Or you can do it like a teardrop. Now that's a rather long teardrop. You could do a shorter teardrop too. And then finally, you could do a double where you kind of have one leaf here and one leaf here. Now it's almost a heart shape too, you could say, with that double one. But let's just go ahead and start with putting these together into some sprigs. And when I'm working in my journal, depending on the size of the journal page you're working on, you're probably going to want to make these smaller than what I've done here. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of a sprig with some of these basic leaves on it first. So I'll do like a single vein, and then I'll make a few smaller veins kind of coming off of it. And each of these is going to become the base for a leaf. So we can do a leaf just something like this. We can add a little more bumpiness as we create our leaves, and I like doing that. I think it adds a really natural effect to kind of let your pencil kind of wiggle around a little bit. You can experiment. You might discover, whoops, I went too wiggly, and that's okay. Just erase it, carry on. There's no reason you have to have a perfect leaf every time. Okay, I did that a little bit opposite of the way I usually do, but because I needed to add another one. There we go. That's a little bit of a funny leaf, but I don't mind that. You could do your stems and have multiple leaves kind of coming off of them. So let's do some longer ones on this one. It is nice if you can work in groups of 3 or 5, but there's no reason you can't also have 2. Sometimes when I have a lot of leaves going, like you can see I've got in my journal here, sometimes I'll have a single leaf like over there, or maybe there's just 2 leaves together right there. That's a lot of fun, and you can just throw in those single leaves to kind of fill things up after you've done your bigger sprigs of leaves. How could I forget? I miss doing the veins on my leaves, and I only add veins on larger leaves. And again, I'm kind of going heavier pressure at the center where each little vein starts on the larger vein, and then I kind of just lighten off. So sometimes I will even skip the veins altogether, depending how small the little leaf gets. Like these, they really don't even need veins so much. So I'll make that decision about veins based on the size of the leaf and whether it's necessary. Sometimes your leaves can almost feel a little bit empty. Add veins. If they seem like they're full enough, just leave them be. This time I'm just going to do a couple of main veins, and then I'm going to go ahead and do some smaller, wider leaves. I think you kind of get the point. These are almost the same. I'm going to do a few teardrop sprigs, and then I'm just going to move on. So actually this is a good one for beginners because you can really just add just a few onto a main stem. You can do a main stem and then branch a few off of it. So I've got my main stem and then 2 smaller branches. And then what I'm going to do is do groups of 3 this time. So over here, I'll put 1, 2, 3. They're kind of getting small. But you can see how you can also vary how this looks just by putting smaller leaves and grouping them a little bit differently. So you can experiment with ways to group your leaves so that they're maybe not spaced the same, and you can see how different those all look. I just changed the spacing. Everything is on a single branch right here. I almost did the same sort of thing, but I put groups of 3 on the ends of each little branch. And I've got, you know, a couple, well, actually, I guess there's 3 branches now coming off the main one. Let's do just a few simple ones. This one would actually be a good one to do as a quick space filler, because maybe you want just a little bit more than 1 teardrop shape, but you could have 3. Here's an example. All you need to do is 2. Let's go ahead and do something with this double leaf. So we'll do a couple of, like I say, this almost looks like a heart or 2 smaller leaves together. And you could just leave it like that, or if you want to add more, you could extend this down a little further and add a few more branches. Things are almost looking a little bit cloned there, so I'm going to extend this one up a little higher and then add another one. It's so easy, especially when you're talking, to make things a little too symmetrical. So that's what's happening to me sometimes. Let's repeat this, but this time let's add some flowers and some berries to our sprigs. First, let's just do some berries. Keep it simple. So you can do groups of berries. I always like to group them, or I should say almost always. They do look better if they're kind of in family sets rather than thinking about lonely berries by themselves. Sometimes it's nice to have them touching each other, and especially if you're going to do groups of small berries. So let's do some small ones that are just like tiny little dots. You're going to want to put them in groups rather than scattering them completely random throughout your piece. You can scatter a few randomly throughout your piece, but I like to kind of put them into groups of berries. And so that they're kind of, I don't know, they just tend to look better that way. Little families of berries. And then we can join them together with a stem. So let's just do that right now. And then what I like to do with these bigger berries is I like to add a little crown to them. You don't have to add a crown to your berries, but I just do this tiny little scribble on the top of each berry that's pretty much directly, like if you could draw that vein right through the berry almost, that is where, or not the vein, rather the stem. If you were to carry on that line right through the berry, which I don't recommend you actually draw it, but if you were to, that's where you're going to want to have that little crown right on the very top. And let's join these guys. And then I will show you how I like to take the little berry bunches and add some leaves. But let's go ahead and do a few flowers, and then we'll go ahead and add some leaves after. So some of the simplest flowers to do are just these basic 5-petal flowers. So I'm going to do some, and again, you can either group them or you can do them kind of separate from each other. So let's do these ones a little separate. They're kind of just randomly spaced, and then let's do some in a group. So they're close together. Again, little flower family here. We could do a couple over here. You can see these are not perfect. Like if you look up close, really, they're not even all perfectly spaced, and that's okay. You can also do some kind of side profiles. So it's almost like you're going to draw a little cup and then just draw some little bumpy shapes on the top. You could do them perfectly spaced, but I'm just going to actually do them not perfectly spaced or perfectly sized so that it kind of gets a little bit, that's really weird, that one. A little bit more random looking. That one's weird, but that's okay. You can see sometimes weird ones happen. If you really don't like it, you can erase it, but you can also leave it sometimes. Yeah, that one's really bad. Let's erase it. I shouldn't say really bad, but I really don't like it. Let's try again. You can also do side profile flowers by just drawing your petals so that you only have like 3 of them, maybe 4 of them showing. You can make the odd one drooping. I'm going to erase this little one here because I think he's looking like he's almost, when I join these together, he's going to look like he doesn't belong. And I'll just add another one right here. And let's just quickly join these together. So put those 3 together and then these 2 together. And let's just join these And if you feel like you've got too many flowers in one bunch, like maybe what I'm thinking right here, you can always separate them out and do like a couple of bunches. And again, that's something you can just make your decision on as you're drawing. Then you can decide what leaves you like best and just add some little leaves. So I'm just going to do that quick so you get some ideas of ways I might add leaves to these tiny little flower sprigs and berry sprigs. I really do like the teardrop ones. I'm going to do that on this one. You can make them like they're kind of coming behind those berries sometimes. And again, you could do really large or you could do really small. You can decide how many you want to add. Let's do some longer leaves on this one since the berries are small. Let's make the leaves larger. I'm actually kind of thinking it would look cute to do smaller leaves on this one just because the berries are so big. It would have been cute to have some small leaves, but that's okay. I'll make smaller leaves on some of our flowers. Again, you can make them like they're going behind. Let's do some bunches of small ones on this one. So I'm going to do them in groups. So kind of like what I did up here where I'm going to do them kind of in groups of, doesn't even have to be groups of 3. And I'm going to color them in so they're darker this time. And they're just going to be cute tiny leaves. And the darker color adds some contrast. So let's add a group of 3 up here. And you can see I did add some just to the stems themselves. But definitely it's nice to add a few extra leaf sprigs. You can really see how adding those leaves adds life to those little flowers, doesn't it? And the darkness is really nice if you've got a lighter color flower. Let's go ahead and make these little flowers darker this time, and then we'll go with bigger, lighter leaf. I'm gonna add maybe a little flower here too. Let's do some of our teardrop shaped leaves, but let's do them a little bit longer so they're not as circular looking. Again, you kind of just play with it, and also depending on how you're composing your writing on your page, that's going to also impact where you're going to put an extra leaf or whatever. So let's just move on to these ones. And I want to extend the leaves. So we did some tall leaves, but this time I want to do the tall pointy leaves, but I want to make them even taller. So kind of like this. I should say taller in relationship to these flowers. You could almost say these are like little tulips, but not quite, because these aren't quite tall enough to be tulip leaves. But gives a little bit of that impression. Now I need to redraw my little flowers here because I messed up my leaves. I erased everything. And so now I've got to put those flowers back in here. And you'll notice I'm using more of these sloppy little heart-shaped petals along with the teardrop shapes. Then I'm going to go ahead and draw my leaves on each of these. And let's just do some of these long ones, but let's do them dark. I'm going to make them really long and skinny this time. We didn't really do any long skinny ones that were dark yet, so let's do that. I think we'll be happier with this. Let's take our leaves and berries and flowers to create some simple page borders. Okay, these are short samples, but you could extend these as long as you'd like on your page. I'm drawing some straight lines, some loose wavy lines, and some tighter wavy lines. And then on this side, I am going to do a oval or a circle, which I actually don't use wreaths very often, but let's just talk about how you can use one if you want to. So I've just kind of freehanded that, not a perfect oval, but you could always take an object, like this is a lid, you could always use that to get a perfect circle. Find something that works well for your sketchbook or your journal, and you would have, you know, something you could use if you want to do a lot of round wreaths. As I said, I tend to use foliage almost more like in little bunches, or I kind of make it up as I go, and I'll show you an example of that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this so that I can work upright. That's actually easier for me for the leaves, but wow, are those kind of crooked, hey? Anyways, what you're going to want to do is we're going to be using these as our kind of like our base for our leaves. And you could imagine each of these as a border that you might put down the side of your page in your journal. You could do it around the whole outside of your page. So a border on all 4 sides would be perfectly fine. You could just do a border at the top, a border at the bottom, wherever you would like to have a strip of leaves. So to start out, I'm going to do some of these little veins, and I'm going to do them kind of like this. So they're going to kind of be staggered, and they are going to be coming out away from my center line, something like this. And these are going to be the veins for the little leaves. I'm going to go ahead and use my basic leaf first and just go ahead and do one of these on each of our veins. Let's do all of them on this side and then we'll go to the other side. That way we can kind of keep our same position going along here. And give yourself time if you need it. If you're just new to doing leaves, just be patient. Don't expect them to turn out perfectly the first time. It takes some practice. For this next one, why don't we do the teardrop? And I think that would be kind of neat to have it sort of staggered as well. And you know what I'm actually going to do? I'm going to take a little artistic license here, especially since this isn't a perfect line. And I'm going to actually do some of these in clusters. So even though I've staggered it, I'm probably going to throw a few other leaves in differently as I go. So I'm doing these as teardrops. And you will see I'll start kind of changing things up here right away. So with this one, I'm going to do another line. So I'm just throwing in a random extra vein, and then I'm going to throw an extra leaf in on top of it. And then I'll come down again and do kind of our staggered thing, and then I might throw in maybe even an extra 2 here. Let's try this. Maybe could even just had just a total of 2, and then just whoops, come here and we'll add another one. How's that? And again, you could be perfectly staggered, but it's kind of fun sometimes to change it up, and instead of just doing perfectly staggered, you know, symmetrical, if you will, leaves, you can throw in an extra one every now and then, or an extra 2 every now and then, and you can kind of have it a little bit more organic and natural, and that's always a lot of fun to change things up a smidge. Okay, start. Let's throw one in here and another one here. And maybe one out here. You can also give it a little bit of a branch so that they're not all tightly attached to your center vein, if you will, of your vine. Do I like that? Maybe, maybe not. But you can see, you can erase things if you need to, or play with them. All right, let's do one that's got some little flowers on it. I think that would be a fun way to do this particular kind of extra wiggly one or wavy one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and add some flowers first in random places. I'm not going to be super contrived this time. I'm going to just try and get them kind of more or less, oh, 6 little leaves on there, more or less random. I'm going to actually erase the odd spot in the middle of my vine as well, so that I can have the flower kind of almost come in front of that vine. That's optional. You can just put your flowers beside your little vine, and that would be totally fine too. So I'm just going to go around and draw these in here. And as I said, I'm not being super precise. I think I need to have 2 over here because I've got another group. I've got that group of 2 up there. So I want to have some places that I've got groups of 2. And then I'm going to come in here and just do these little sets of 3 leaves, kind of like what we did before. So I'm going to just add, I'm going to attach little flowers with a stem, and sometimes I'm going to throw a little leaf onto that stem. Other times I'm just going to like throw a little stem coming off like so, and then put a little bunch of leaves on there. So most of the time I'll probably do 3 leaves, but not always. You want to keep things interesting, and maybe sometimes you'll put 2 leaves. Sometimes you'll have them more perfectly lined up with each other, like that's, you know, the 2 are across and 1 on top. This time they're a little more staggered. You can do what you want. It's really just, it's your artwork, and this is just supposed to be fun, relaxing. You don't want to overthink, and you don't want to be overly pressured. You want to really be able to focus on your verse and not have to like really stress about the artwork, right? So that's where these are just kind of fun doodles. And you can see sometimes I'm almost just filling in the gaps. So I'm just, as I'm working my way down the stem, I'm deciding, okay, what does it need now? And it feels like it's got a gap, so I'll put a leaf there. It's got a really big gap, I'll put 2 leaves there. It's not a very big gap, maybe I won't put a leaf at all, right? And sometimes when those little flowers are really, really close to the main stem, I'm not even always attaching them because they almost look like they are attached in some situations, right? So again, just kind of go based on how it feels, where you want to add little leaves. It's pretty hard to go wrong on this. Now, I really, really don't like how sloppy I did that line, so forgive me. I am going to erase it, and I'm going to do it straighter. Is that better? I think it's a little bit better. Now with this one, why don't we do one with some berries on it? And I'm going to just start with doing some groups of maybe 3 berries, some of 2. You can do single berries. I'm going to do it a little bit random so that we don't have things looking too contrived. And again, erasing parts of your main line can actually be kind of helpful so that you're able to put a few of the berries actually kind of in front so that it gives the impression that they're wrapping, you know, maybe in a circular way around the vine. So I'm just going to do that in one place. We don't need it too often. And then we can just join these to the main stem, if you will. And I'm just going to do some quick little crowns on these just because the berries are slightly bigger, but that's totally optional. The thing that's really going to make this come to life is the leaves. Again, the leaves really just make that difference. Maybe I'll do some of these long ones. We did this earlier. Let's go ahead and add several bunches of them. I'm going to try and make a little slightly bigger bunch of leaves here. Maybe I can see if I can fit 3 in this section here. Yeah, I kind of like that. It does look better if you're able to kind of give them a little bit of a stem and make them just move away a little bit from the main center stem. So some of these are looking a bit close, which if you like that look, that's totally fine. But for some reason, that one was kind of bothering me just a bit. So yes, I do like it better when I kind of give them a little bit more of a stem before I draw that actual leaf. And so you can see how adding the berries has really brought some life to that. And that's just using a single straight line as the base of our vine, if you want to call it that, or our border. Why don't we do some smaller bunches of berries next? So this is where we're going to do a bunch of tiny ones. And we'll just, again, kind of fill in some areas around this main stem. And we'll do them in bunches, but you can always add a few random ones if you want, like just maybe a couple here, 3 there, whatever. And as you can see, I was just doing some really tiny little dots. But since we've done some nice long leaves like that, why don't we try doing our teardrop leaves? And again, rather than go too close to the stem, I think I'm going to try and give a little bit of space before I start these little teardrops. So just kind of come out first with some lines like so, and then add your little teardrop leaves on top of those. You can also add some stems to kind of join your little berries right onto your main branch. And once again, you'll notice I'm staggering things. I'm not having things line up perfectly one side to the next. That is a look that you might like, but I tend to like the staggered look better, but you can definitely go ahead and do things the same on both sides if you prefer a more symmetrical kind of look to your vine. You can see sometimes my teardrops are going a little bit oblong and I'm not even really getting that center vein in the center, but you know what? That's okay. We're just keeping this simple and fun. And I honestly think that once you get a whole border made of this, you won't even notice those few that might get a little bit off-centered as you do this. And then just go in and fill any areas that you feel like you have gaps. And you can see how different each of those are. And all I'm doing is just picking a different berry or a different flower, a different leaf, and just kind of changing them up. There's really not a right or a wrong way to do this. Why don't we do some of these really loose random flowers that are almost like little heart-shaped petals, or I don't know, very much more organic or abstract. A little bit more side profile. I'm not sure I'm going to like how those are right across from each other like that. I think I'm going to change that right now. And I think in some of these I want to have maybe groups of 2 flowers in the same place. So I'm going to try and leave a little bit more space so that I can get just a little bit more than 1 flower there. Maybe I'll do the same thing up here. And again, I'll join them onto the main stem. Now, it seemed like it worked best to do kind of a darker, long leaf with these. I'm not sure that we have to do it that way, but I think that's what I'm going to do just to play it safe because it worked. Again, I think these do look better if they have a little bit of a stem to kind of let these leaves kind of grow off of rather than attaching them straight to our main stem. Now I'm coloring these in with my pencil, but if you were using any other medium, for instance, if you were planning to use colored pencil, or if you were planning to do felt pen, or even just pen and ink, like just a black pen on white paper, you wouldn't want to color these in with your pencil because that would kind of make things get a little bit ugly when you try and add your next medium. So definitely, if you're going to fill anything in, fill it in with the medium that you're planning to kind of finish your piece in. If you're going to finish in pencil, and that is often how I leave things, then this is a great idea. But like I say, if you're planning to put colored pencil on top, colored pencil does not blend very well with pencil, and you'll want to just work really lightly with pencil, or even better yet, with colored pencil, it is somewhat erasable. I would just do this in colored pencil, and I would probably even skip the pencil part altogether. It's one of those things you can just experiment and decide what you like best. One more thing I should have mentioned is sometimes when you want to fill up a vine with something, you don't even have to do it fully with leaves. You can also add these little curly things, and this is a lot of fun. So we need to add some of these to this one, and then we'll just add leaves after to finish it off. And sometimes you can even join the curls together like that, because often vine type plants or anything that kind of grows like this does tend to often have these little curly tendrils or whatever they call them that kind of allows it to, like, as it's growing, attach to like the bean pole or to other plants or to a fence, right? So those little curlies can make a really nice addition to a vine. And then you can just keep it simple and do some really tiny, easy leaves on it. So these are sort of teardrop shape, but there's no reason you couldn't do more like a traditional leaf shape as well. And in this case, I actually am attaching these straight to my main vine. You can decide if you like that or not. Sometimes I think I branch myself a little bit too far away from the vine, like maybe I did here. But like I say, experiment and see what kind of leaf shapes and the way that you attach your leaves, the size of your leaves, and your little berries, your flowers. Just experiment. Decide what your favorites are and the look that you're after in any given piece that you're working on. Now I've turned my page around again, and I'm gonna go ahead and fill in this oval wreath. And I'm kind of leaning towards using berries. I don't know, I really like the way the berries work for this. So I'm just gonna go ahead and throw some berries in here. And then I think I'm gonna go pretty big with these berries and draw them kind of in clumps. Again, I'm big on clumping things, but if you like to kind of scatter things more evenly, you can do that. If you need to fix the shape of your berries, you can absolutely do that. Having an eraser, like one that's on the end of your pencil, or even a pen eraser, which is basically, it just looks like a pen, but the whole inside is an eraser. This is super helpful if you want to get into small spaces like this. I'm going to go ahead and erase the oval that's shining through, or peeking through rather, my little berries here. And then I'm going to just go ahead and add all of these cute little crowns to my berries. Again, this is totally optional. I think it kind of adds a special touch though, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that quick. I might even just lightly lift the overall wreath shape off just enough so that I can barely see it, and it will be my guideline. So know that it's there. I can still see it slightly, and I'm going to go ahead and draw in some larger teardrop shaped leaves. If you would like to see some more traditional leaf shapes, you can watch my art for scripture writing video where I'm drawing traditional leaf shapes with berries. Let's just figure out where we're going to put these by drawing in our little veins first. I think doing that helps me get my wreath a little less contrived. Once you've filled in your larger leaves, you can come in and add some smaller ones. I'm also going to go ahead and add the stems that are holding my berries on here too, just to kind of fill that section up. Sometimes if you find you don't have room for a full leaf, you can always just make it kind of peek out from behind some other leaves, and you don't need to have the full leaf there. So just continue adding leaves until you're happy with how full your wreath is. I hope this tutorial has inspired you to add some simple artwork to your own journal, whether that's scripture writing, gratitude journal, or even planner. And that as you use these simple florals and leaves, it brings a little taste of God's beauty and peace into your everyday life and inspires you to continue enjoying your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye!